Chapter 11. Setting the Plan in Motion. At exactly 6:30 a.m., the blaring sound of a trumpet echoed through the base, shaking the very walls and sending startled birds fleeing from the nearby trees. It wasn't just the 40 recruits who were jolted awake. Even the beasts lurking nearby were startled by the deafening noise. Standing proudly at the front of the base was Nala, blowing the bugle call on a trumpet as though her life depended on it. The recruits spilled out of their rooms, some still fumbling to dress, pulling on their tunics and boots as they rushed outside in confusion. They quickly lined up, sleep still in their eyes, but panic on their faces. Aiko stood next to Nala, watching the chaos unfold with a wicked grin. Once Nala finished playing, Aiko turned to her, eyes gleaming with approval. "Good girl," she said, handing Nala a spirit crystal. "Have a treat." Nala beamed, her eyes lighting up with joy as she clutched the crystal. She practically purred at the praise, her excitement palpable. Aiko then faced the recruits, her voice cutting through the morning air like a blade. "Listen up, maggots. From now on, you are all my bitches. When someone asks, 'Are you a bitch?' you will proudly say, 'Not just any bitch, but Aiko's bitch,' and you will say it with a smile on your face." The recruits exchanged nervous glances, their growling stomachs betraying the fact that they had been rudely awakened and were unprepared for what was coming next. Aiko's expression darkened as she continued. "Now run 100 laps around the front yard of the base. If I come back and don't see you disgusting insects sweating and in pain, there will be no breakfast for you." The recruits, realizing the gravity of the situation, straightened up and began jogging, their feet pounding against the ground in synchronized rhythm as they set off on their laps. The front yard of the base was the size of a football field, and the distance of 100 laps around it was no small feat. They were already hungry, but the threat of missing breakfast motivated them to push through the fatigue. Aiko grinned wickedly. "Let's go, my pets. Start running." The morning plans. Earlier that morning, I had woken up with a sense of excitement. Today was the day that my plans would truly start to come together. Everything was about to fall into place. After a sleepless night filled with Aiko's teasing and Nala's surprising enthusiasm, I was ready to get down to business. I woke Aiko and instructed her to wake up the recruits and get them running their laps around the base. I also told her to wake the 4 others on her way and have them meet me in the war room on the 2nd floor. The base was large and could house a significant number of people. It had been incredibly cheap when I had secured it, likely because no one wanted it. After all, it was far away from the city, positioned right next to the wild zone, and it required daily infusions of spirit crystals just to keep the force field active. Most would see maintaining a base like this as a luxury, an unnecessary drain of resources. But I wasn't like most. I had no intention of staying in the safe zone. The base's location was perfect for my plans. It sat right where the force field protecting the safe zone ended, and its own force field, powered by spirit crystals, covered the rest. This was a little-known fact, but a critical one. The kingdom's force field didn't extend to the back of the base, where the rock wall and waterfall were located. That was because the base's force field was already covering the area. What the kingdom didn't realize was that this base had a secret cave system behind the rock wall, which led directly into the wild zone. It had been long abandoned, which was why no one had known about it. The force field had shut down when no more crystals were supplied to it, allowing a huge snake beast to breach the area, making it unsafe until the hero discovered it later. The base wasn't just an opportunity. It was a gold mine. A massive spirit crystal mine lay hidden in the cave, protected not by beasts, but by secrecy. It wasn't visible from the cave's entrance, but by carving a hole 10 meters to the left of the entrance, it could be accessed. The war room and the plan. In the war room, I gathered the 5 recruits I had personally selected. Each of them was unique in their abilities, and I had plans for all of them. There was Nala, formerly the redhead girl, whose real name was Mira, but who would be referred to as Nala from now on. She had fully embraced her new role, especially under Aiko's watchful guidance. The crafter was a quiet but brilliant girl named Sarah, who had shown remarkable talent with weapons and tools. The potion maker, a sharp-eyed girl named Elara, was as skilled with her recipes as she was with her tongue. The miner was a sturdy, dependable girl named Kale, who had grown up in a mining family and knew her way around rocks and minerals better than anyone. Finally, the ugly girl, whose name was Lyra, stood silently, her posture stiff. Though she had been neglected by her family, she was intelligent, and her technique would prove invaluable. I stood before them, my voice calm but firm. I need each of you to hand over the scripts of your current breathing techniques. They looked confused for a moment, but obeyed, handing me the scrolls. Without hesitation, I ripped them apart, tearing the pages into pieces. The shock on their faces was immediate. Before you say anything, I continued, I'm giving you something better. I handed each of them a new breathing technique script, tailored to their skills. To Sarah, I gave Artisan's Edge, a breathing technique designed to enhance a crafter's precision and speed in creating weapons, armor, and tools. To Alara, I gave Alchemist's Breath, a powerful technique that allowed the user to refine even the most complex potions with ease. Kale received Mountain's Pulse, a technique that granted her strength and endurance while working in the mines, attuning her to the earth itself. To Lyra, I gave Siren's Allure, a breathing technique that allowed her to passively absorb essence from everyone around her, enhancing her own cultivation without needing to train. And to Nala, I gave Phantom's Veil, a technique that, when mastered, would allow her to create phantoms, clones of herself that she could send out to spy or guard the base from a distance. You will practice these techniques starting today. Each of you has been given 5 spirit crystals. By morning, I expect all of you to have used them to their full capacity. Lyra, you will be in charge of distributing spirit crystals from now on, ensuring the others have what they need. Lyra nodded, her expression calm. Yes, Ren, I continued. Sarah, after you're done with your breathing technique, you will practice your crafting. I need you to level up quickly. We will all depend on the weapons, armor, and tools you create. No one is allowed to use anything that isn't made by you. Sarah's eyes lit up with determination. Understood. Alara, I said, turning to the potion maker, I'm giving you this recipe. I handed her the scroll for the Serum of Shifting Forms. It's complicated, and you won't be able to understand it fully yet. But keep practicing. The breathing technique will help you master it. For now, you are also in charge of our food. Alara's eyes scanned the recipe, curiosity filling her expression. I'll do my best. Kale, I continued, turning to the miner. You'll be mining all day. You'll have 10 recruits to assist you. Rotate them daily to avoid exhaustion. Kale grinned. Finally, something I'm good at. And Nala, I said, meeting her gaze. You're under Aiko's command. You'll be our spy and the base's guard. Once you level up your core, you'll be able to create phantoms of yourself. Use them to patrol the area and ensure we're protected. Nala smiled mischievously. I won't let you down. Finally, I dismissed them, and they left the war room, excitement buzzing in the air. 5 spirit crystals a day was unheard of for most cultivators. The idea of advancing so quickly filled them with hope and determination. As I watched them leave, I couldn't help but smile. Everything was falling into place. Chapter 12, Teaching the Beasts a Lesson. Aiko crossed her arms, leaning against the entrance to the base, watching as the recruits finished their tasks for the morning. Why didn't you tell them about the tournament in a month? We need to get strong to defeat the rest of the commanders. I grinned, adjusting the daggers on my belt. No need to rush them. I'll let them know in a couple of weeks. They'll train until exhaustion either way. No point in piling on more pressure. Aiko raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical, but didn't argue. All right. But we're cutting it close. I waved her off. First things first, we need to gather meat to feed everyone. Tell Nala to get a list of ingredients from Alara, then join us in front of the base. The beasts have been pounding the force field ever since Nala played the trumpet. They'll get used to the sound soon enough unless we show them that approaching the base means danger. Aiko's eyes lit up with excitement. Time to remind them who's in charge. The beasts attack. The low hum of the force field vibrated in the air as we stood just outside the base's protective barrier. The beasts circling the area were restless, their growls rumbling from the tree line. When Nala joined us with the ingredient list in hand, the tension grew. We all knew it wouldn't be long before the beasts would make their move. The first one to emerge from the shadows was a Frostclaw wolf. its icy fur shimmering in the daylight. Not far behind it were a few steelhide boars, their thick armor-like skin gleaming under the sunlight. But the real threat was the venom-tail lion, its long, barbed tail flicking dangerously as it watched us with predatory eyes. These weren't just low-level beasts. These were middle-ranked and high-middle-ranked monsters. We had our work cut out for us. Without hesitation, I nodded to Aiko, and we charged. The fight. The Frostclaw wolves were the first to attack, their icy breath steaming in the air as they lunged toward us. I dodged the first one, my daggers flashing in a precise arc as I slashed at its hind legs. The beast howled in pain, but it wasn't down yet. Before it could retaliate, Aiko struck, her hands glowing with light magic. A burst of radiant energy shot forward, blinding the wolf just long enough for me to drive my blade into its throat. But the wolves were just the start. The steelhide boars were next, charging with incredible speed for creatures their size. Their tusks gleamed menacingly as they rushed toward us. One of them came dangerously close to skewering me, but I twisted just in time, landing a heavy strike on its hind legs, slowing it down. Aiko took on the venom-tail lion, her light magic deflecting its deadly tail strikes. But it was fast, faster than we expected. It managed to graze her arm with its tail, and a flash of poison hissed through the air. I felt a spike of concern, but Aiko only grinned, her magic flaring brighter in response. "This thing is strong," she shouted over the noise of battle. "But we're stronger." I nodded, my focus on the steelhide boar in front of me. Its thick hide deflected most of my blows, and it was like fighting a walking tank. Finally, I managed to cripple its front legs, bringing the massive beast crashing to the ground. We fought for what felt like hours, though it was probably only minutes. By the end, both Aiko and I were injured, blood trickling from various cuts and bruises. But we had managed to take down 4 beasts, including the venom-tail lion. Panting, I wiped the sweat from my brow. "That's enough for now," I said, my voice hoarse. "Let's stop and cover Nala while she gathers the drops and the meat." Gathering the spoils. Nala moved with swift precision, her hands a blur as she expertly carved the meat from the fallen beasts. She gathered the spirit cores, claws, and other valuable materials, all of which would be useful for Alara later. While she worked, Aiko and I stood guard, still on edge despite the battle being over. "This will become Alara's job eventually," I muttered, wincing as I shifted to get a better look at the forest. "But not until she's more powerful." Nala finished gathering everything and turned to us, wiping her brow. "I've got everything. I'll take it to Alara now." I nodded. "Good. Help her prepare a big breakfast buffet for everyone." Nala gave a quick salute and headed off toward the base, while Aiko and I made our way back to the penthouse, both of us exhausted from the fight. Healing in the hot springs. By the time we reached the 3rd floor, the hot springs were calling to us. We stripped off our bloody, torn clothes and sank into the steaming water. The heat worked wonders on our sore muscles, and I couldn't help but relax. I grabbed 20 spirit crystals and tossed them into the spring. Instantly, the water began to glow with energy, the crystals infusing the water with healing properties. Aiko sighed in relief, sinking deeper into the water. "These are the last of the crystals we had on hand, right?" I nodded. "Yeah, but don't worry. I'll be giving the recruits 1 crystal a day from now on. 5 a day would drain our supply too quickly." "But you promised them 5 a day," Aiko reminded me, her brow furrowed. "I'll make good on that," I said, closing my eyes and letting the warmth seep into my bones. "The cave has more than enough to keep us supplied. I'll worry about that. You just relax." Aiko smirked, moving closer to me in the water. "Relax, huh? I know what you mean." Her fingers trailed down my chest, a teasing glint in her eyes. "How about a quickie?" I chuckled, holding up my hands in defense. "We don't have time for that right now. You need to practice your breathing technique and consume some crystals. It'll heal both of us faster." She pouted, but her grin didn't falter. Fine, but you owe me later." We spent the next few minutes in quiet concentration, the spirit crystals rapidly healing our injuries as we practiced our techniques. By the time we stepped out of the hot springs, our wounds were gone, our energy restored. Preparing for breakfast. With our clothes clean and fresh, we made our way down to the kitchen. As we entered, the smell of roasted meat, fresh bread, and fruit filled the air. Alara had outdone herself, preparing a buffet that looked fit for royalty. I took my seat at the long table in the center of the room, while smaller rectangular tables were arranged in pairs around the hall. The scene looked like something out of a medieval banquet, and the recruits stared in awe at the feast before them. Aiko stood beside me, glancing around at the recruits. "Shall I tell them breakfast is ready?" I nodded. "Do it." Aiko turned to Nala, who had just returned. "Inform the other four. From now on, they're sergeants." Nala gave a quick nod and dashed off to carry out her orders, while Aiko headed to the front yard, where the recruits were still catching their breath after the morning's battle and training. They looked up as Aiko approached, their faces pale with exhaustion. They were about to cry tears of relief, thinking they had been forgotten, when Aiko walked up to one of the girls, sniffed her, then, much to the recruit's shock, licked the sweat from her neck. "Disgusting," Aiko said, her voice dripping with disdain. "It's not salty enough, but I'll permit it today since it's your first day." The recruits blinked in surprise, unsure whether to be relieved or terrified. "Follow me," Aiko commanded. "Breakfast is ready." Chapter 13. Unveiling the Cave of Crystals. The recruits entered the kitchen cautiously at first, their eyes wide with disbelief. The scent of freshly cooked meat, roasted vegetables, and baked bread filled the air, and for many of them it was the first time they had ever seen such an abundance of food. Some of them had never even tasted meat before. A few of the younger recruits whispered to each other, wondering if they had made the right decision when they joined us. But now, faced with this feast, they couldn't hide their joy. If this was what they got to eat, they'd gladly fight beasts every day, even if it meant risking their lives. The recruits sat down, mouths watering, their hunger overriding any lingering fear or doubt. The sergeants, now fully embracing their roles, took their places beside me at the long table. They couldn't stop talking about how powerful their new techniques were, sharing stories of their first few experiences using them. Each of them sounded excited, proud of how fast they were improving. I listened, nodding occasionally, but my mind was already on the next step. Once everyone had eaten, I dismissed the recruits, but not before turning to Aiko. "I need you to keep training them," I said, my tone serious. "Focus on building their stamina. It's what I need most from them right now." Aiko raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Stamina, huh? What's the plan?" "They need to be able to run and fight for extended periods. I have a specific plan for them, but for now, get them to run with everything they've got for about an hour. After that, heal them, and then put them into groups of 2. Have one punch while the other endures, and then they'll switch." Aiko's grin widened, and I could see the glint of excitement in her eyes. "So, you want them to be exhausted and pummeled up?" "Exactly," I replied. "Once they're worn out, heal them again. That way they'll build both defense and stamina, and you'll get to train your healing abilities." Aiko leaned in closer. "At the moment, I can only heal 2, maybe 3 at a time. It's tricky." "That's fine," I said. "Focus on what you can do for now. We'll keep pushing their limits. Lunch is at 4, so bring your pets with you then." Aiko gave a mock salute. "Understood." "Commander." The secret tunnel. After dismissing Aiko to her training duties, I called for the sergeants, with Nala staying behind with Aiko for training. I had the others, Kale, Lyra, Sarah, and Alara, meet me at the front of the stairs leading to the 3rd floor. Once they arrived, I led them through a long hallway toward the backyard, where the hot springs steamed under the open sky. They gasped in unison as they entered the backyard, their eyes wide with amazement. None of them had expected such luxury in a place so close to the wild zone. "I never thought there would be a hot spring here," Kale murmured, her voice filled with awe. "There's no time to daze," I said, a smile tugging at my lips. "We have important work to do." I moved toward the stone wall at the far end of the hot springs, gathering the energy from my celestial tyrant technique. With a deep breath, I channeled the energy into my fist, punching the stone with all my strength. A loud crack echoed through the air as a huge dent formed in the rock. The others watched in silence, their expressions a mixture of awe and confusion. I didn't stop. I punched the stone again and again, each blow chipping away at the wall until finally a tunnel began to take shape. The final punch broke through completely, and the tunnel opened up into a massive cave. The sudden light from the spirit crystal clusters inside the cave was blinding at first, a surge of energy illuminating the space. We all took a moment to adjust our eyes to the brightness. When the light settled, what lay before us was nothing short of spectacular. The cave was filled with glowing crystals, shining like stars in a throne room of pure light. The air hummed with energy, and the walls seemed to pulse with life. "This is it," I said, turning to the sergeants. "The crystal mine. It could last us a lifetime." Assigning tasks. I turned to Kale, who was still staring in disbelief at the sheer number of spirit crystals. "Kale, you're in charge of mining these crystals. You'll be working with Lyra, but listen closely." Kale nodded, her face serious. "Got it. This place is technically part of the wild zone," I explained. "If it weren't for the crystal's light, this entire area would be completely dark. The only reason it's safe for us is because of these crystals, but there's another danger. Miasma." "Miasma?" Lyra asked, her brow furrowing. "Miasma is a dangerous energy found in the wild zone. None of us can handle it until we reach Gold Core, but your breathing technique, Siren's Allure, allows you to absorb energy passively. You can also absorb miasma without getting hurt." Lyra's eyes widened in surprise. "I can absorb miasma?" "Yes," I confirmed. "You'll be fine, but stay by Kale's side. I don't want either of you going off alone. Your task is to mine the crystals until you've gathered around 100 each. Once you've got them, place 50 outside the cave and keep working until lunch at 4. They both nodded in agreement, determination setting into their expressions. Crafting and potions. Next, I turned to Sarah. "I need you to craft portal bags for everyone. Do you know how to make them?" Sarah nodded. "Yes, I can make portal bags. They're not large, but they can hold about 2 persons' worth of space." "Good. I need you to make 47 bags, one for each of us and all the recruits." Sarah's eyes widened. "That's a lot. It takes 10 spirit crystals to make just one." "I'm aware," I said. "How long will it take?" "I can make no more than 5 bags a day," she answered. "Then that's 10 days at most. Start as soon as possible." Before Sarah could leave, I handed her a scroll. "This is called the Blood Portal. It requires a skilled crafter and some potion ingredients. Take a look at the materials and tell me what you'll need." Sarah studied the scroll, her brow furrowed in concentration. "I'll need boar hide, venom claw fur, and frostmane leather." "I'll make sure we get those materials," I promised. Finally, I turned to Alara. "You'll be working on something more complex." Alara perked up, clearly intrigued. "What do you need?" "I need you to tell me what ingredients we'll need to create the potion for the blood portal." Alara thought for a moment, then nodded. "I'll need latex sap, darkroot petals, and crimson vines." "Good," I said. "Gather the materials you need for potions and make sure lunch is ready by 4 o'clock. The sergeants all nodded, ready to tackle their tasks. I could see the determination in their eyes, and I knew that they were eager to prove themselves. Chapter 14, The Awakening of the Celestial Sovereign. After ensuring that everyone had their tasks, I made my way to the bedroom. In the corner, hidden from prying eyes, was a large sack, a bag I had been keeping for this very moment. Inside were no less than 1,000 beast cores, all waiting to be used. It was time to tap into the true potential of my Celestial Tyrant breathing technique. Grabbing the sack, I made my way to the basement, an empty and quiet space where no one would disturb me. I sat in the center, the bag in front of me, and took a deep breath as I activated my cultivation technique. My breathing became controlled, and energy flowed steadily through me, centering in the glowing circle that marked my chest. Finally, as a silver core cultivator, I could begin using the full capabilities of my technique. The 3 powers of the Celestial Tyrant technique. Unlike most cultivators, my Celestial Tyrant technique was far more complex and powerful. There were 3 main functions of this technique that set it apart from others. 1. The Rare Beast Core. The first function granted me a Rare Beast Core, unlike anything a normal cultivator could find in the wild. This beast was chosen for me by the technique itself, and once I consumed enough beast cores, the beast would grow and evolve through the ranks, starting as a mortal beast and eventually becoming a celestial beast and beyond. Unlike other core beasts that required spirit crystals to grow stronger, mine absorbed power directly from the beast cores I consumed. The beast once assigned to me, would develop naturally as I fed it more cores, though I didn't know the exact number required for each transformation. When the beast reached its limit for its current form, it would evolve to the next stage on its own. My rare beast, the Celestial Sovereign Ajalote, was already forming deep inside me, waiting to grow. 2. Core creation. The second power of my technique was the ability to create beast cores for others. For every 10 beast cores I consumed, the technique would generate a mortal beast core, which I could give to others to help them form their own core beasts. If the recipient already had a mortal beast core, the technique would produce a spirit beast core for them instead. This process followed a strict order. A person could not receive a spirit beast core without first having absorbed a mortal beast core. The cores I created were incredibly valuable, and they weren't the low-grade cores found in the wild. They were infused with the power of my Celestial Tyrant technique. But I didn't use these cores for myself. They were meant to be distributed, making others stronger, which brought me to the third and most important part of the technique. 3. The experience siphon. Once I gifted someone one of the beast cores I had created, they would unknowingly become tied to me through my technique. Every person who used one of my cores would provide me with 10% of their daily cultivation experience without them even realizing it. This meant that as they grew stronger, a portion of their progress would be funneled directly back to me, allowing me to advance even faster. This was my greatest secret. By sharing these powerful cores, I could slowly siphon power from dozens, maybe even hundreds, of cultivators, all without them ever knowing. As they climbed through the ranks, I would ride their success straight to the top. Absorbing the beast cores. I began by pulling the first core from the sack. It was about the size of a pearl, with a soft glow and smoke swirling inside. The color of the smoke varied based on the beast, but it was always mesmerizing to watch. Holding the core in my hand, I felt the glowing circle on my chest react, pulling the core toward it. The core floated into the air for a moment before it was absorbed into my chest, and I felt a surge of energy ripple through my body. The process was smooth, almost natural. One by one, I continued to pull cores from the sack, each one disappearing into the circle on my chest. The more I absorbed, the more powerful I felt. My connection to the Celestial Sovereign Ajalote grew stronger with every core I consumed. The Ajalote, my core beast, was waiting to evolve, but for now, it remained in its mortal beast form, gathering strength. With every core I absorbed, the circle on my chest glowed brighter, and the power inside me swelled. After I had absorbed 10 beast cores, the first of my technique's secondary powers activated. A mortal beast core was created within me, ready to be given to someone else. Creating mortal and spirit beast cores. For every 10 cores I absorbed, the technique produced a mortal beast core, and after 10 sets of mortal beast cores, I would create a spirit beast core. These cores were independent of the Celestial Sovereign Ajalote growing inside me. They were meant for others, gifts I would use to gain influence, loyalty, and power. The process continued. Each time I reached the 10th core, a small glowing orb appeared in my chest, ready to be given away. The mortal beast cores were powerful in their own right, and anyone lucky enough to receive one would gain a beast far more formidable than any they could find in the wild. But the true power lay in the spirit beast cores. After creating 6 spirit beast cores, I could feel the weight of their potential. These weren't ordinary cores. They were the key to forming alliances and gaining control over powerful individuals. And each person who accepted one would unknowingly strengthen me by giving me 10% of their experience every single day. By the time I had finished absorbing all the beast cores in the sack, I had created a total of 46 mortal beast cores and 6 spirit beast cores. I hadn't consumed them. They were stored within me, waiting for the right moment to be given away. The growth of the Celestial Sovereign Ajalote. While creating the cores for others, my own Celestial Sovereign Ajalote had been quietly growing within me. The Ajalote, a rare mortal beast, wasn't like the beasts that others bonded with. It absorbed energy directly from the beast cores I consumed, growing stronger with each one. Unlike the cores I created for others, I couldn't control exactly when the Ajalote would evolve. It didn't have a set number of cores required for each transformation. Instead, it would grow at its own pace, only evolving to its next form, Spirit Beast, when it had absorbed enough energy to reach its natural limit. I couldn't rush the process, but I could feel the ajolote's power building. The more beast cores I consumed, the closer it would get to its evolution. When that moment came, it would evolve into something far more powerful than any ordinary core beast, something that would help me dominate the cultivation world. For now, the ajolote remained a mortal beast, but I knew it wouldn't stay that way for long. The next step. With the 46 mortal beast cores and 6 spirit beast cores stored safely within me, I stood up and stretched. The power inside me was still humming, the energy from the cores settling into my body. I knew what my next step was. I would need to find the right people to give these cores to. People who would unknowingly help me grow stronger with each day they cultivated. These cores would be my ticket to influence, power, and wealth. And the celestial sovereign ajolote inside me would continue to grow as I absorbed more cores. As I left the basement, I couldn't help but grin. The pieces were falling into place, and soon I would be far beyond what any ordinary cultivator could ever hope to achieve. Chapter 15. New Techniques and Core Beasts. I arrived a little late for lunch, but as I stepped into the dining hall, I noticed that no one had started eating yet. All eyes were on me, waiting patiently. It seemed that I had unknowingly set the tone for this group. No one dared to begin without my signal. As I took my seat, Lyra approached, her hands holding a portal bag. "Here," she said, passing it to me. "These are all the spirit crystals we've gathered so far." I took the bag and nodded in approval, weighing its contents. "Good job." At that moment, Sarah, the crafter, stepped forward with a grin on her face. "I've got something else for you." She handed me 3 more portal bags. "Thanks to my new technique, Artisan's Edge, I can create them faster and better than before." I nodded, impressed. "That's excellent. This will come in handy." I turned to Aiko and handed her 2 of the bags. "Give one to Nala, and keep the other for yourself." Then I handed the 3rd to Lyra. "Once you have 3 more bags crafted, keep one for yourself, give one to Alara, and another to Kale." Everyone nodded eagerly, clearly energized by the progress we were making. The food was served, and everyone quickly dug in, but I could tell that most were eager to return to their tasks. The sergeants were full of excitement, especially after receiving the new techniques, but the recruits seemed exhausted. The training had been hard on them, though none complained aloud. After we finished eating, I dismissed everyone to continue their duties, but I called Aiko over before she could leave. "Here," I said, handing her a bag of spirit crystals. "Give each of the recruits 2 spirit crystals today instead of 1. We need to up the pace if we want to be fierce in the tournament." Aiko nodded. "Understood." "And one more thing," I added. "Before they start absorbing the crystals, get their breathing technique scripts and a record of their core levels." She raised an eyebrow. "What are you planning?" "You'll see," I said with a smirk. "Once you've gathered everything, don't let them absorb the crystals until I arrive. I've got something special for them." Training the recruits. By the time I made my way to the training area, Aiko had already torn the old breathing technique scripts apart, scattering the shredded papers across the floor. When I arrived, the recruits looked at me with a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. Some seemed as though they might cry, but they held their emotions in check, trusting there was a reason behind the destruction of their scripts. I scanned the list that Nala had handed me. She had taken the time to gather all their names and current core levels. Some were at low iron vein, 1 star. A few had reached mid-iron vein, 3 stars. A couple even touched high iron vein, 5 stars. None of them were particularly strong yet, but that was about to change. "All right," I said, calling each recruit forward by name. As they approached, I handed them a new breathing technique script, one by one. A murmur went through the crowd, one recruit whispering, "I knew they wouldn't rip our scripts without a good reason." Once everyone had their script, I addressed the group. "You've all been given the same technique, a very powerful one. It's called Succubus Crimson Desire." The name caused a ripple of excitement to flow through the recruits. They could sense the raw potential in their hands. I let Aiko take control from there. She stepped forward with her usual commanding presence and issued her orders. You will train the rest of the day with this technique, using the 2 spirit crystals each of you has been given. Nala, she called, turning to her loyal subordinate. Once they've consumed the crystals and completed their training, they can return to their quarters. Make sure they get it done. Nala gave a quick nod, looking sharp as ever. Aiko handed her 5 spirit crystals. Train while you watch over them. You've earned it. She grabbed Nala by the chin, giving her a quick kiss. Good girl, she said with a smile, causing Nala to blush. Once everything was in order, Aiko and I slipped away to the woods for some privacy. A talk in the woods. As soon as we were alone in the woods, Aiko pushed me against a tree, her eyes filled with mischief. She didn't waste any time, taking off her shirt and pressing herself against me. What had started as a conversation about plans quickly became something more. Once the deed was done, we lay on the ground, catching our breath under the shade of the trees. Aiko's head rested on my chest, her silver hair catching the light of the sun. About your technique, she said, looking up at me. What does it really do? I knew it was time to tell her the full truth. It's called the Celestial Tyrant Technique, and it has 3 main abilities. The first is that it grants me a rare core beast. Mine is the Celestial Sovereign Ajalote, and it grows by consuming beast cores. It doesn't have a set number of cores to evolve. It just grows until it reaches its limit, then transforms into something stronger. Aiko listened closely, her eyes gleaming with interest. And the second? The second power is that for every 10 beast cores I consume, my technique creates a mortal beast core. After 10 of those, it creates a spirit beast core, and so on. I can give those cores to other people, but they must always start with the mortal beast core before moving up to a spirit beast core. Aiko nodded, understanding. And the third? The third part is what makes this technique so dangerous, I said with a grin. Everyone who uses the cores I create will unknowingly give me 10% of their cultivation experience every day. It's not enough for them to notice, but over time, I'll grow stronger with each person who uses my cores. Aiko's eyes widened in realization. That's incredible. I nodded, then handed her a mortal beast core. Here, this will create the perfect beast for your celestial light breathing technique. She took the core in her hands, staring at it with awe. And how do the beasts evolve? I explained the full progression to her. Mortal beast, spirit beast, feral ascendant, mystic beast, elemental beast, celestial beast, divine beast, astral beast, primal sovereign, and finally, the eternal beast. I also told her that once she consumed the mortal beast core, she would need to nurture it with at least 20 spirit crystals before consuming the spirit beast core I had also prepared for her. Aiko held the core for a moment, then closed her eyes and consumed it. The energy swirled around her, and moments later, a fox appeared in her core, a creature with silver fur and glowing embers around its paws. It's called the Emberpaw Fox, I said, feeling the name resonate within her. Aiko grinned, her silver hair seeming to glow even brighter as fox ears sprouted on top of her head. She reached up to touch them, laughing with pure joy. I love it, she said, planting a kiss on my cheek. This is perfect. I smiled, feeling satisfied. The others will have to wait until their silver core to get their beasts. Aiko seemed to consider something, then looked at me with a smirk. You know, I've already planned a get-together for tonight with the whole team and recruits. At the hot springs? I asked. Exactly, she replied. I've already instructed Alara to prepare some snacks for 7 p.m. It'll be a good time to relax. I shrugged, not minding the plan. All right then, let's finish up here and practice our techniques in the meantime. And so, we began practicing our breathing techniques, feeling the day's events slowly come together as we prepared for what would come next. Chapter 16, A Night of Relaxation and Revelations. When Aiko and I arrived at the hot springs, the entire team was already gathered, wrapped in towels and waiting. The steam from the water rose gently, creating a calming mist that surrounded the area. Aiko gave Nala a quick glance, and Nala stepped forward to address the group. You've all worked hard today, Nala said, her voice carrying across the springs. Training is over. Relax, eat, drink, or soak in the springs. Do as you please. At her words, the tension that had been holding everyone's posture straight melted away. Nala turned back and handed Aiko and me towels before taking her spot by Aiko's side. Aiko smiled at Nala and continued braiding her vibrant red hair as I wandered over to the table where snacks were laid out. I immediately spotted something that made my mouth water. Boar tacos? I grinned, grabbing a few. This is a treat. I bit into the taco and sighed with satisfaction. Ah, I miss tacos, I said, savoring the taste. After a few bites, I couldn't resist any longer. I jumped into the warm water of the springs, letting the heat work its magic on my tired muscles. Aiko soon joined me, braiding Nala's hair while sitting at the edge of the spring, her legs lazily dipping into the water. The sergeants came over as well, each holding a drink in hand, piña coladas and other colorful cocktails. I sipped from a cold can of what passed for beer in this world, which wasn't bad. It wasn't quite the same as what I used to have in my old life, but it got the job done. Lyra's transformation. As we were all settling in, Lyra stood up from the water, clearly excited by something. In her eagerness, she forgot she was only covered by a towel, which promptly fell, leaving her exposed. She blushed furiously, immediately trying to cover herself with her hands. Aiko laughed, amused. Here, take this. She removed her own towel and handed it to Nala, who quickly passed it to Lyra. Relax, we're all friends here. The other sergeants couldn't help but notice the change in Lyra's appearance. Sarah, ever the sharp observer, said in surprise, Your body? I thought you had a hunch on your back. Lyra nodded, still covering herself as best she could. I did, she admitted softly, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment and pride. I saw this as the perfect time to explain. You see, when you level up your core, you expel more and more impurities from your body. It's something commoners rarely notice because they receive so few spirit crystals, so it takes them years to level up. And the nobles? They're already beautiful, so they just become even more so. But Lyra, you weren't exactly like them when we started. Lyra's face went redder at the mention, but I quickly added, That doesn't matter now. With the amount of spirit crystals you're getting here, and your siren's allure breathing technique, you're leveling up faster than ever. Lyra nodded again, this time with more confidence. It's true. I was at Copper Vein, 5 stars, but just now I turned into a silver core. Her excitement was contagious. That's great news, I said, genuinely pleased. In that case, I have something for you. I reached into my portal bag and pulled out a mortal beast core. It pulsed with energy, drawing the attention of everyone around us. This core, I said, holding it out to Lyra, is a powerful beast core created specifically for you. It'll unite you to me, which means I'll get 10% of your daily cultivation. In return, you'll receive a beast that's perfect for your technique. Lyra took the core with wide eyes, her expression one of awe and anticipation. She consumed it without hesitation. A shimmer of light enveloped her, and the change began. As the energy settled, her silk-fin nymph manifested, transforming her further. Her back straightened, and a long, elegant silkfin tail replaced her legs. The pimples that had once dotted her face and neck vanished, leaving behind smooth, radiant skin. She looked like a beautiful mermaid. The other sergeants watched, stunned into silence. They had seen Lyra's transformation from the hunchbacked girl she used to be, and now, standing before them, was someone utterly breathtaking. Aiko smirked, leaning over to Lyra. You can turn it off at any time. Just think about it, and you'll go back to your normal form. Lyra nodded, barely able to contain her joy. For the first time in her life, people were looking at her with admiration and acceptance. She beamed, and the rest of the sergeants offered her congratulatory smiles. Relaxing in the springs. As the night went on, the mood in the hot springs became even more festive. Drinks flowed freely, and the smell of the boar tacos filled the air as everyone laughed and joked, enjoying the rare moment of relaxation. Lyra was still glowing, figuratively and literally, her newfound confidence drawing positive attention from everyone around her. For the first time, she was at the center of the group, laughing and talking with the others. Her transformation had not only changed her body, but also the way she saw herself, and the way others saw her too. The sergeants, filled with excitement about their own futures, were eager for what was to come. They drank more than a few cocktails, their moods getting lighter with each passing hour. Even Kale, who was usually the most stoic of the group, was laughing and holding a drink, relaxing in the water alongside the others. Nala, meanwhile, was dutiful as ever, always by Aiko's side. But even she seemed to be enjoying herself more than usual, her red hair damp from the steam as she sipped a drink, content to be in the company of those she trusted most. I sat back, observing everything with a smile. It was rare to see everyone this happy, and it felt good to know that the team was finally coming together. I had no doubt that we were going to crush the competition in the upcoming tournament. As the night deepened, more and more of the group began to get wasted. Laughter echoed off the walls of the springs, and soon, a few of the recruits, who had clearly had more to drink than they should, started singing a loud, off-key version of a song I didn't recognize. Aiko, grinning at their antics, slid closer to me in the water. "They're enjoying themselves," she said, resting her head on my shoulder. "Yeah," I agreed. "They deserve it. Tomorrow we'll push them harder, but for now, let them have their fun." We stayed in the springs for hours, enjoying the peace, the laughter, and the feeling of camaraderie that had developed among the team. By the time most of the group started to pass out from too much food and drink, I knew the night had been a success. Spirits were high, and the bonds we had formed today would only make us stronger in the future. As the last of the group staggered off to bed, I took one last look at the springs. Tomorrow would be another day of hard work and training, but for tonight, we had won a small victory. Chapter 17, The Calm Before the Wild Zone. As the night came to an end, everyone had left to their quarters, leaving only Aiko, Nala, and me. On our way out of the hot springs, we noticed Lyra still by the water, quietly cleaning up the mess from the night's festivities. I gave her a nod of appreciation, but before I could offer to help, Aiko took the lead. With a wave of her hand, her light magic flickered into action, practically cleaning everything in an instant. Meanwhile, Lyra used her silk fin abilities to make the spring water expel any dirt or debris that didn't belong. In less time than it took to blink, the area was spotless. "Efficient," I remarked as we made our way back to the room. Aiko was walking alongside Nala, her arms draped around her, and I couldn't help but notice how close they had become. I mused aloud, "I don't even know why Nala has her own room if she never uses it. Maybe I should take it instead." Nala, overhearing, giggled. Aiko turned and slapped me playfully on the backside, smirking. "Hurry up, hot buns," she teased. We were almost at the door to the room when a soft cough behind us made us pause. Turning around, we saw Lyra, standing awkwardly at the entrance. You're lost," I said with a grin. "It happens. This place is massive. The stairs are that way." I was about to point her in the right direction when Aiko, always quick on her feet, called from inside the room. "Hey, Lyra, if you want to join us, you'll need to wear this maid outfit." I nearly burst out laughing when Lyra's response came far quicker than I expected. "Yes, no problem," she said, her eagerness evident. Aiko raised an eyebrow playfully. "So do you like boys or girls?" she asked, her tone laced with mischief. Lyra blushed. I don't know. I haven't been with anyone before," she admitted. "Can I try both?" Nala chuckled as she approached Lyra, taking her towel away and replacing it with the maid outfit. "You'll make a beautiful blonde maid," she said, admiring Lyra's form. "And yes, you can try all three of us," she added with a grin. With that, we all headed into the room, me closing the door behind us. If it weren't for the fact that everyone else in the base was passed out drunk, no one would have slept that night. The morning after. The sun was barely rising when I was jolted awake by the sound of Nala's trumpet. She was standing just outside, blowing with full force, and beside her stood Alara, holding a tray of elixirs. One by one, the recruits stumbled out of their quarters, still groggy from the previous night's drinking. Alara handed each recruit an elixir, and within minutes, their hangovers had disappeared. It was a good thing, too, because Aiko had plans for them. Aiko, ever the taskmaster, stood beside Nala, watching as the recruits recovered. Once they had all gathered, she spoke. "Nala will be in charge of you this week," Aiko announced, her tone sharp but motivating. "By the end of this week, I expect every one of you to reach Copper Vein, 1 star. Nala, already at Copper Vein, 4 stars, stood with her arms crossed, looking over the group. She had been leveling up quickly, thanks to the constant flow of spirit crystals Aiko had been providing her. She would have reached 5 stars last night, but with Lyra's newfound siphoning ability, much of Nala's energy had been redirected. Aiko and I had no time to waste either. We needed to push ourselves harder, and today would be the start of that. The hunt for more cores. With the recruits under Nala's command, Aiko and I set off to train ourselves. We had to gather more beast cores, and the beasts near the base were becoming too weak to give us the kind of cultivation energy we needed. This time, we were ready for a more intense hunt. We cleared nearly half the beasts around the force field that surrounded the base, cutting through around 20 high middle-level beasts. The fight wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Each beast we took down gave us more spirit crystals and more meat to sustain the base. We stored everything in portal bags and made our way back to the base to drop off the meat for Alara and the materials for Sarah. Checking in on progress. When we returned, we found Sarah waiting for us, a proud smile on her face. "I've already finished making 10 portal bags," she said, handing them over. "It didn't even take me an hour." Her newfound mastery over the Artisan's Edge breathing technique was impressive, and she was producing items faster than ever. I knew she was going to be a key player in the team's progress. We made our way down to the mine, where Lyra greeted us. She had undergone yet another transformation. She had consumed the spirit beast core I had given her, and now she had evolved into a luring mist sprite. Her body was ethereal, almost transparent, like a siren made of mist, and she had filled the entire cave with a dense magical mist that was absorbing the miasma from the environment. The miasma was fueling her cultivation, making her grow stronger at an astonishing rate. She was already at Silver Core, 2 stars, the same level as me, and higher than Aiko. The rate at which she was leveling up with her Siren's Allure technique was remarkable, even if her technique wasn't as powerful in combat as mine or Aiko's. Still, it was clear that Lyra's progress was essential to the group's success, especially with the miasma being such a valuable source of energy for her. "I'm impressed, Lyra," I said, watching as the mist swirled around her. "You're moving faster than I expected." She smiled, clearly proud of her progress. "The mist makes it easy," she admitted. "But Kale, she's feeling left behind." We turned our attention to Kale, who was hard at work, mining spirit crystals as quickly as she could. She hadn't yet reached Silver Core, but I wasn't worried. With the amount of crystals flowing through the mine, I knew it was only a matter of time before she caught up. "We mined 240 spirit crystals yesterday," Kale said, not looking up from her work, "and we'll keep going until I level up." I nodded, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Don't worry, you'll get there. I'm thinking of upping the number of crystals you sergeants get each day." Her eyes lit up at that, and she smiled for the first time in a while. "Thanks, Ren. That would help a lot." Final instructions. With the mine running smoothly, Aiko and I prepared to leave for the day. We had plans to push ourselves even harder than before. "Good work today, everyone," I said, addressing the group. "Aiko and I will be away until tomorrow. Breakfast will be at 10, lunch at 4, and while the springs won't be open today, you can grab a snack from the kitchen if you're hungry at 7 p.m. Aiko stepped forward, her voice firm. "Nala is in charge while we're gone. If you need anything, go to her." We gathered our supplies, packing them into the portal bags Sarah had crafted, and headed out of the base. Once we were outside, I turned to Aiko. "It's time," I said, handing her the spirit beast core. She nodded, consuming the core without hesitation. The transformation was immediate. Her fox ears sharpened, and her Emberpaw fox evolved into the Shadowfang fox. The new form granted her the ability to double her mana, but I knew this would come at a cost. "The miasma will burn us," I reminded her as we made our way toward the wild zone. "It'll hurt like hell, but your healing power will keep us alive." Aiko smirked, her eyes glowing with determination. "Let it burn. We're going to get stronger no matter what." We pressed forward, knowing that the wild zone held dangers that could easily kill us, but it was the only way to grow. The beasts in the safe zone couldn't help us anymore. We needed something far more powerful if we were going to become the strongest. As the dark mist of the wild zone came into view, we took a deep breath and prepared ourselves for the pain to come. Chapter 18. The Pain of Growth. The moment Aiko and I crossed the threshold out of the safe zone and into the wild zone, the change was immediate and brutal. The miasma clung to the air like a living entity, and as soon as it touched our skin, it felt like we were being doused in acid. Our skin turned an angry red, as if we were being burned alive. It was unbearable at first. The pain gnawed at every inch of my body, making it nearly impossible to move, let alone think. Every breath felt like fire. Aiko was struggling beside me, her entire body trembling, her eyes wide with agony. We hadn't even entered fully into the wild zone, and already we were at our limits. An hour passed, though it felt like an eternity. My mind was a blur of pain, but slowly I began to adjust. My body was screaming in protest, but something inside me started to shift. Ren's celestial tyrant breathing technique was forcing my body to adapt, and with each painful breath, I felt my spirit core grow stronger. Finally, I leveled up to Silver Core, 3 stars, and the pain became slightly more manageable. I could move a little more freely now, the unbearable agony becoming a dull roar in the background. With newfound strength, I forced myself to my feet and stumbled over to Aiko, who was still gasping, her body unable to cope with the pain. I knelt beside her, pulling her up and positioning myself behind her. She was too weak to stand on her own, so I sat behind her, pressing her back against my chest. I wrapped one arm around her waist to steady her, while my other hand rested on her chest to hold her close. I whispered in her ear, "Breathe. In and out." Her breaths were shallow and ragged at first, but gradually, as I held her and whispered instructions, she began to fall into rhythm with me. Little by little, the screaming in her mind became a hum. The worst of the pain remained, but she could focus now, her breathing steady. For almost 2 hours, we stayed like that, fighting through the pain together. Finally, Aiko's body began to adjust, her core slowly strengthening. I could feel her spirit energy surge as she leveled up to Silver Core, 2 stars. The tension in her body melted away, and she gasped, as if she had just come up for air after being underwater for too long. "I can finally think," she said, her voice weak but steady. "You did it," I said, my voice filled with relief. "I told you this would work." Aiko exhaled, a weary smile on her face. "I was still healing us, even when I couldn't think straight." "How?" "That's your Shadowfang Fox," I explained. "It's not an ordinary beast. Its auto-heal ability is tied to your core beast, which is perfectly suited for your celestial light breathing technique. Your fox will evolve into a kitsune eventually, and when it does, you'll be able to create cores even more easily." Aiko chuckled, turning her head to look at me. "I don't know what you saw in me when I was just that poor orphan girl, but I'm pretty sure I only caught your attention because of my chest." I laughed softly. "You're a fighter. You would have found a way out of your situation, chest or no chest." She grinned, the tension between us lifting. But then I turned serious. "We've wasted too much time recovering. We need to hunt. Here," I said, handing her a small vial. "Drink this. It'll keep you awake for the rest of the night." Aiko took the vial and drank it without hesitation. Her energy returned immediately, and we both got to our feet. The pain was still there, but it was no longer crippling. We had to move forward. Hunting the beasts of the wild zone. Now able to move, albeit still with pain, Aiko and I ventured deeper into the wild zone. The air was thick with miasma, and the beasts that roamed here were far more dangerous than anything we had encountered before. Our first challenge came in the form of blood slimes, thick gelatinous creatures that pulsed with dark, crimson energy. Their bodies seemed to shift and reform with each step they took, and they could regenerate quickly, making them difficult to kill. We needed their core blood for Alara's potions. "They're tricky," Aiko said, wiping sweat from her brow. "We'll need to strike fast and burn them before they regenerate." I nodded and quickly formulated a plan. Aiko summoned light spears, hurling them toward the slimes, which burst into violent flashes of light as they hit. Their bodies quivered and oozed, but they didn't collapse. That's where I came in. I lunged forward with dual daggers, aiming for the core of the slime. The red glow at the center of the creature pulsed, and I thrust my weapons through, slicing the core in half. The slime collapsed, its regeneration cut off. "We need at least 5 more of these," I said. Aiko gritted her teeth and nodded, already preparing her next attack. The Crimson Snakes. After gathering enough blood slime cores, we moved on, searching for the crimson snakes that slithered through the tall grass. These serpents were vital for Sarah's crafting materials, Their scales were tough, and their venom could be used to create powerful poisons or antidotes. The crimson snakes were notorious for their ambush tactics, blending seamlessly into the crimson-hued landscape, waiting to strike. We had to stay alert, knowing any misstep could lead to a deadly bite. As we scouted the area, I caught the faintest movement out of the corner of my eye, a flash of red scales sliding through the grass. "To the left," I called out, and Aiko was already moving. She conjured a beam of light, which shot through the grass and revealed a snake poised to strike. With lightning speed, I dashed forward and sliced through the snake's head with one swift motion. Its body thrashed briefly before falling still. We continued through the area, gathering crimson scales and venom sacs from the snakes we killed. By the time we had what we needed, we were both covered in dirt and sweat, but the satisfaction of having what Sarah needed made it worth the effort. Facing the final beast, the Graveclaw Bear. The final challenge of the day came when we encountered the Graveclaw Bear, a massive creature easily the size of a mammoth, with poisonous green fumes leaking from its mouth. Its claws were sharp enough to rend steel, and it exhaled noxious fumes that filled the air with poison. "This one's going to be tough," I muttered, my grip tightening on my daggers. "Let's not waste any time," Aiko said, her fox ears twitching as she summoned her magic. The bear roared, shaking the ground beneath us. It lunged forward, its massive claws tearing through the air. I dodged to the side, barely avoiding the strike, while Aiko shot a burst of light energy at its flank. But the bear was tough. The poison it exhaled made it difficult to get close, and every time we struck, it seemed to shrug off the damage. "I'll distract it," I called out to Aiko, darting to the bear's side. It swung at me, but I was too fast, slipping past its defenses and landing a deep cut along its leg. Meanwhile, Aiko cast a healing aura around us, keeping the poison at bay while lashing out with her light spears. After what felt like an eternity of battle, I saw an opening. The bear roared and reared up, exposing its throat. With a powerful lunge, I drove both my daggers into its neck, twisting them as I delivered the fatal blow. The bear let out one last bellow before collapsing in a heap of fur and claws. Breathing heavily, I wiped the sweat from my brow and glanced over at Aiko. "We did it." She nodded, her breathing just as ragged as mine. "But I think that's enough for today." Exiting the wild zone. By the time we exited the wild zone, the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the landscape. The moment we crossed the barrier back into the safe zone, the burning on our skin faded, and the miasma was no longer suffocating us. Exhausted but victorious, we made our way back toward the base. "We'll need to go back soon," I said, glancing at Aiko. "But for now, we've done enough." She smiled, her silver fox ears twitching slightly. "We got what we needed. Let's rest up before we go back." As we walked back to the base, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. We had survived the wild zone, gathered the materials we needed, and leveled up. It was a tough day, but we had come out stronger for it. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But for now, we could breathe easy. Chapter 19, Recovery and Planning. The journey back to the base was slow. Aiko and I were exhausted, our bodies sore from the battles in the wild zone. Every step felt heavy, but the thought of finally resting in the hot springs pushed us forward. As we reached the entrance to the base, Nala appeared, ready to help. Without a word, she hurried to Aiko's side, gently draping her arm around her shoulder. "Let me help you," Nala said softly, guiding Aiko toward the springs. I nodded in thanks, feeling a surge of gratitude for her. As we stepped into the hot springs, I grabbed a handful of spirit crystals, about 50 in total, and dumped them into the water. The familiar glow of energy surged through the water, and I could already feel my body beginning to recover. Nala brought over sandwiches, chips, and some tea, placing them by the edge of the spring. "Good night, Master," Nala whispered, giving both Aiko and me a soft kiss on the cheek. She turned to leave, but not before sending us a knowing smile. Once Nala was gone, Aiko leaned back against the edge of the spring, letting out a long sigh. We sat in silence for a while, simply enjoying the warmth and the healing energy of the crystals. But after about 5 minutes, Aiko turned to me. "Ren," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "pour the rest of the crystals into the water. All of them." I hesitated for a moment, but then nodded. Reaching into the bag of spirit crystals we had gathered from the wild zone, I pulled out the remaining 200 crystals and tossed them into the spring. As the water glowed even brighter, we both sank deeper into it, letting the power of the crystals wash over us. For the rest of the night, we cultivated in silence, the energy of the spirit crystals surging through our bodies, healing and strengthening us. By the time morning came, I could feel the difference. I was stronger, sharper, and Aiko, though still resting, had a renewed glow about her. Morning routine. As the sun barely began to rise, the familiar sound of Nala's trumpet echoed throughout the base. The entire place came alive as the recruits scrambled out of bed, rushing to their training spots. Nala, ever efficient, was already putting them through their paces by the time Aiko and I emerged from the springs. Nala made her way up to us, standing at attention. "Master Aiko, Ren," she said. "I have the morning report." Aiko, still stretching from the long night, nodded. "Let's hear it." "None of the recruits are below Iron Vein 3 stars anymore," Nala began, her voice crisp. "The weakest members are at Iron Vein 3 stars, while the rest have reached 4 stars and 5 stars. There are now 4 Copper Core 1-star recruits." Aiko smiled, impressed with their progress. "Good. Here's what I want you to do. Promote the 4 Copper Core recruits to captains. They'll each take charge of 9 recruits. I don't want to manage 40 people directly anymore. I want orders passed through these captains." Nala nodded and was about to leave, but Ren called her back. "Wait," he said, turning to Aiko and whispering something in her ear. Aiko's eyes lit up with a mischievous glint as she turned back to Nala. "We're going to divide the recruits into specialized units. You will choose who goes where, based on their strengths and abilities. There will be 4 groups. The Bloodwing Daughters, our flying unit, the Bloodlust Berserkers, our ground combat unit, the Lustful Sirens, our water unit, and the Crimson Desire, our spellcasting unit." Nala grinned. "Consider it done. And let the sergeants know we're expecting them here shortly. No training until after our meeting with them. They need to cultivate and rest for now," Ren added. The sergeants' progress. Within an hour, the sergeants assembled in the room, their core levels evident by the energy they exuded. Lyra was still Silver Core, 2 stars. Alara had advanced to Copper Vein, 5 stars. Sarah matched her at 5 stars, and Kale had finally reached Silver Core, 1 star. "Kale, I have something for you," Ren said, pulling out a Mortal Beast Core and a Spirit Beast Core. He handed them to her with a nod. "Consume the Mortal Core first." Kale didn't hesitate. As she consumed the core, her body shimmered with energy. She let out a sharp breath as her form shifted. Scales of velvet black appeared across her arms, and a serpent's tail sprouted from her back. Her eyes gleamed with a predatory glow. She had transformed into the Velvet Coil Serpentress. The room broke out in congratulations, everyone admiring her new form. The reports. Once the congratulations died down, Kale cleared her throat and gave her report. "We mined 400 spirit crystals yesterday." Lyra followed up. "Of those, we used 20 crystals per sergeant. That's 100 crystals and 5 per recruit, making it 200 more. Another 20 were used for the force field. That leaves us with 80 extra crystals, which Sarah used for crafting." Sarah stepped forward, beaming. "Thanks to my recent level up, I no longer need 10 crystals per bag. I can make them with just 5 crystals now. All 47 portal bags have been completed." Ren smiled at the efficiency. "Good. Kale, with your new beast core, I'm expecting you to double the crystal output. Alara," Ren handed her the ingredients from their hunt, "use these to make the blood portal potion. Once it's done, deliver it to Sarah." He turned to Sarah. "You'll use the blood portal potion on the Scarlet Bloodshell suit. When it's complete, the suit will allow the wearer to store items inside it, like a walking portal bag. If someone tries to stab the wearer, the blade will pass right through, as if they were made of blood. For the recruits, make their suits black. Sergeants get red, Aiko's will be silver, and mine gold." The sergeants exchanged glances, impressed by the sheer potential of the suits. "Now, continue with your routines," Ren said. "Aiko and I will retire to our room for a bit. We'll be leaving for 3 days tonight. By the time we return, I expect every recruit to have reached Copper Vein, 1 star. Nala will be in charge." The sergeants nodded, and Ren and Aiko headed up to their private quarters. Once inside the room, Aiko turned to Ren, her eyes soft but tired. She leaned in, her lips brushing against his. "Just one kiss before we sleep," she whispered. Ren smiled and kissed her back, the wariness of the day fading for a moment. Then Aiko turned around, curling up on the bed. Ren watched her for a moment, marveling at how far they had come, before he lay down beside her. Both were utterly exhausted from the trials of the past few days. As the room fell into silence, the faint sound of the base's activities drifted up through the windows, but Ren and Aiko barely noticed. Their bodies needed rest, and their minds needed to prepare for the challenges to come. Soon, sleep took them both. Chapter 20, Power Beyond Limits. When Aiko woke up, the bed beside her was empty. She reached out instinctively, expecting to find Ren, but instead there was a faint, lingering warmth. She frowned slightly, then noticed the surge of energy coming from below. The basement. Quickly dressing, Aiko made her way down the stone steps, the air growing heavier as the energy intensified. Upon entering the dimly lit chamber, she saw Ren seated in the middle, surrounded by a swirling aura of raw power. His eyes were closed, and in his hand, he held 10 spirit beast cores, their soft glow pulsating with life. As if sensing her presence, Ren opened his eyes. "Hi, babe," Aiko said, smiling as she walked over to him. She bent down and kissed him softly on the lips, her eyes flickering toward the cores in his hand. "Is that what I think it is?" she asked. Ren smiled but didn't answer. Calmly, he consumed the 10 spirit beast cores one by one, their glow intensifying as they were absorbed into his body. As the final core disappeared, a feral ascendant beast core materialized in front of him, glowing with fiery energy. Without hesitation, Ren grabbed Aiko's hand and placed it in hers. Aiko's eyes widened. "You really want to make me fall in love all over again, don't you?" she teased, though there was a serious undertone to her words. She looked at the core for a moment, then nodded and consumed it. Immediately, her body was flooded with overwhelming energy as her lunar flare vixen beast evolved. The vixen's ethereal silver fur began to glow as Aiko transformed. Her entire being radiated an intense silver light, but the surge of power threatened to overwhelm her. Her body trembled, struggling to maintain control over the vixen's vast energy. It felt as if the power would tear her apart. Meanwhile, Ren had begun his own transformation. His beast, the infernal ember salamander, was awakening. A deep red glow enveloped him, and the room grew hot, radiating waves of heat that made the walls tremble. Ren's fiery aura reached out to Aiko, stabilizing the chaotic energy of her lunar flare vixen. The red and silver energies collided but didn't clash. Instead, they balanced each other out, calming the raging forces. Aiko's beast settled, and her glowing form returned to normal as the vixen's power was brought under control. The intense heat in the room began to dissipate. Aiko and Ren sat there, breathing heavily but victorious. Ren smiled. "You did it. Lunar Flare Vixen. That's a powerful beast, far beyond what most can handle at Silver Core." Aiko exhaled slowly. "I didn't think I could manage it until you stepped in. Your infernal Ember Salamander is no joke either." Suddenly, they both sensed something at the entrance to the basement. The sergeants, drawn by the immense surge of power, had rushed to investigate. They hesitated at the door, staring in awe at the now calm room. The oppressive heat was gone, but the lingering energy was still intense. Lyra, Sarah, Alara, and Kale stood frozen. Aiko was now at Silver Core, 3 stars, while Ren had reached Gold Core, 1 star. The sergeants could feel it. Ren's power wasn't normal. It was world-shattering. Ren turned to them with a calm smile. "This isn't just any normal core power. The beasts we possess aren't ordinary. They're world-ending beasts. You'll understand soon enough." Leaving the base. Ren and Aiko prepared to leave the base for another 3-day venture into the wild zone. But before departing, they called Nala into the room. She had recently reached Silver Core, 1 star, and it was time to reward her. Ren handed her both a Mortal Beast Core and a Spirit Beast Core. "Take these, Nala. You've earned them." Nala's eyes lit up as she consumed the Mortal Beast Core. Dark tendrils of energy formed around her, enveloping her as she transformed into the Velvet Wraith. The room grew colder, and 2 shadowy clones emerged beside her, flickering in and out of existence. Nala had finally awakened her Phantom's Veil technique. Aiko stepped forward, giving her orders. One of your clones will guard the base, keeping watch on the surroundings. The other will train the recruits. I want them to reach Silver Core by the time we return. If you need to give them more spirit crystals to speed up their growth, do so. You're in charge while we're away." Nala nodded with pride. She had been given full control, and she wouldn't let them down. Ren handed her 2 more mortal beast cores and 2 spirit beast cores meant for Alara and Sarah. Turning to the sergeants, his expression grew serious. "I expect all of you to reach at least Silver Core, 4 stars by the time we return. If you haven't, it means you think this is all for free. Let me make it clear, it's not." The sergeants, including Nala, listened intently. "The great power I'm giving you isn't free. I need fierce soldiers, soldiers dedicated to surpassing the limits of this world. I will not tolerate complacency. You must crave more power, more respect, more thrills. If you don't push, the recruits will surpass you." Aiko stepped forward, her commanding presence as strong as Ren's. "I want 5 fierce sergeants when we come back. No excuses. When you train the recruits, push them harder than ever. Nala, you know what to do." The sergeants nodded, understanding what was expected of them. Ren and Aiko turned, leaving the sergeants to their tasks. Nala's clones began their assigned duties, one patrolling the base, while the other gathered the recruits for their morning training. Preparing for the wild zone. As they left the base and stepped into the open, Ren turned to Aiko. "Ready?" Aiko smiled, her lunar flare vixen humming with energy beneath the surface. "More than ready."